Welcome back, everyone, to the Deep Dive. This time, we're taking a deep dive into Robert Greene's The 48 Laws of Power. I'm excited about this one.
It's a fascinating book. So many insights into the dynamics of power and, how they play out in different
Yeah,
contexts.
it's like a playbook, right?
Yeah.
But not just for, cutthroat business tactics, but for understanding human nature, too. You sent over a ton of excerpts from the book, so let's jump right in, shall we?
Absolutely.
Okay, part one is all about laying the foundation for power, which uh, sounds pretty foundational, doesn't it?
It is. It's about those core principles that are essential for anyone seeking to understand or wield power.
Right, so law one, never outshine the master. Greene uses that story of Nicolas Fouquet, who threw this incredibly lavish party for Louis XIV to talk about outshining the master.
Yeah, that didn't end well for Fouquet, did it? He landed in prison.
No, it didn't. So what went wrong? What's the lesson here?
Well, on the surface, it seems like a simple case of bad judgment, but if you look deeper, it reveals something really important about the psychology of power.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
Fouquet failed to grasp a fundamental truth. Those in positions of authority are often deeply insecure. They're constantly worried about being challenged, undermined, or even overthrown.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
It's like they're always looking over their shoulder, waiting for the next threat.
Exactly. So when Fouquet threw this incredibly lavish party, one that arguably outshone anything Louis XIV himself could have orchestrated, it triggered those insecurities.
It's like he was saying, look at me, I'm more powerful than the king, without actually saying it.
Right. And Louis XIV, being the absolute monarch that he was, couldn't tolerate that kind of challenge, even if it was unintentional. So he had Fouquet imprisoned, sending a clear message: don't even think about outshining me.
So the takeaway here is to be mindful of the egos of those above us. Don't make them feel threatened, even inadvertently.
Exactly. And it's not just about avoiding overt challenges. It's about understanding the subtle dynamics of power and recognizing how even seemingly harmless actions can be perceived as threats by those in authority.
It's almost like a game of chess, where you have to anticipate your opponent's moves and avoid making any that might trigger their insecurities. Okay, so on to Law 2. Never put too much trust in friends. Learn how to use enemies. This one's a bit counterintuitive, right? I mean, shouldn't we trust our friends more than our enemies?
You'd think so, wouldn't you? But Greene argues that in the realm of power, friends can be more dangerous than enemies.
Okay, now I really want to know why.
Think about it. Friendships are often based on emotion, on shared experiences, on a sense of loyalty and obligation. And while those things are beautiful and important in personal relationships, they can become liabilities in the game of power.
I see what you mean. Those emotions can cloud our judgment and make us vulnerable to manipulation or betrayal.
Exactly. And Greene argues that envy often creeps into even the closest friendships. When one friend achieves success or rises to a position of power, it can trigger envy and resentment in the other, which can poison the relationship and lead to betrayal.
It's like that Shakespearean tragedy, friends turned rivals, consumed by ambition and jealousy.
Precisely. And Greene uses a powerful example to illustrate this principle: Michael III of the Byzantine Empire.
Oh yeah, he placed way too much trust in his friend, Basilius, right?
He did. And Basilius, despite his lack of qualifications, ended up betraying Michael and seizing the throne for himself. It's a classic tale of friendship gone wrong with disastrous consequences.
So what's the antidote to this potential poison? How do we navigate the treacherous waters of friendship and power?
Well, Greene suggests that we might actually find more reliable allies in our former enemies.
Now that's a twist. You're saying we should befriend our enemies.
Not necessarily befriend them, but recognize that they can often be more motivated to prove their loyalty than our friends.
I see what you mean. If someone has wronged you in the past and is now in your good graces, they'll likely go the extra mile to prove their allegiance. They have more to lose if they betray you again.
Exactly. And Greene offers another fascinating example to illustrate this principle. Emperor Sung of China.
Oh, right. He had those potentially rebellious generals, and instead of trying to crush them, he did something pretty clever.
He did. He recognized the inherent instability of relying on potential rivals for support, so he offered them a deal they couldn't refuse: luxurious estates in exchange for their military power.
Wow. So he basically bought their loyalty.
In a way, yes. He appealed to their desire for comfort and security, effectively neutralizing a potential threat and consolidating his own power.
That's brilliant. So the takeaway here is to be wary of putting too much trust in friends, especially when power dynamics are involved, and to recognize that former enemies when handled strategically, can become valuable assets.
It's about understanding human motivations, the complexities of relationships, and the subtle ways in which power influences our interactions with others.
Okay, so we've got never outshine the master and never put too much trust in friends. Learn how to use enemies. What a way to start our deep dive into the 48 laws of power.
And we're just getting started.
All right, so moving on to part 2, the art of deception and strategy. This is where things start to get really interesting.
This is where we delve into the more cunning aspects of power, where appearances can be deceiving and every move is calculated.
Law 3 is all about concealing your intentions. Keep them guessing.
Exactly. The less your opponents know about your true motives, the more power you have. They can't counter what they don't see coming.
So it's like a poker game. Hold your cards close to your chest until the very last moment.
Precisely. A perfect historical example of this is Otto von Bismarck, the Prussian statesman.
Oh yeah, the Iron Chancellor, right, the guy who unified Germany.
Exactly. He was a master at manipulating events behind the scenes, keeping his rivals guessing, and ultimately achieving his goals through this blend of, strategic brilliance and deception.
It's amazing how he managed to orchestrate such a massive political shift while keeping his true intentions hidden from so many.
He was a true master of the game. And, this leads us nicely into Law 4, always say less than necessary.
Ooh, the power of silence. I like this one already.
It's a powerful tool, especially when it comes to power dynamics. Talking too much can reveal your weaknesses, your insecurities, your doubts. It can give your opponents valuable ammunition to use against you.
But silence creates this aura of mystery, doesn't it? It makes people work harder to figure you out, which can actually increase your perceived power.
Exactly. Think about Louis XIV, the Sun King.
He was famous for his calculated silences, wasn't he?
He was. He understood that by saying less, he actually commanded more attention and respect. People hung on his every word, trying to decipher his thoughts and intentions.
So it's not about being a recluse. It's about choosing your words carefully and strategically, using silence to enhance your presence and authority.
It's about mastering the art of the unspoken word. Sometimes the most powerful statements are the ones left unsaid.
And then we have Law 5. So much depends on reputation. Guard it with your life.
Your reputation is everything in the game of power, wouldn't you say?
It's like your most valuable asset. It precedes you. It shapes how people perceive you. It can open doors or slam them shut.
A strong reputation can attract allies, inspire confidence, and even intimidate rivals. But a damaged reputation can be incredibly difficult to repair. It can haunt you for years.
It's like a stain that never quite comes out. Greene uses P.T. Barnum as an example. He wasn't always the most ethical, but he understood the importance of crafting a compelling narrative around himself.
He embraced his notoriety, turned it into a brand. Think about it. He was a master showman, a manipulator of perceptions.
And in a way, he was a pioneer of personal branding, right?
Yeah.
He understood that image is everything.
Absolutely. And that's more true today than ever before. In our social media-driven world, reputation is everything.
So, protect your reputation, cultivate it carefully, and leverage it strategically to achieve your goals.
Because once it's damaged, it can be incredibly difficult to restore. Okay, now Law 6 might seem like a bit of a contradiction.
Yeah, Law 6 is court attention at all costs. Didn't we just talk about the power of silence?
We did. But remember, these laws aren't meant to be followed in isolation. It's about finding the right balance, the right strategy for the right situation.
Okay, so how do we reconcile court attention with, say, less than necessary?
Well, Greene isn't advocating for being a loudmouth or a shameless self-promoter. It's about strategic visibility. It's about making yourself stand out from the crowd in a way that captures attention and reinforces your desired image.
So it's not just about being seen. It's about being seen in the right way for the right reasons.
Exactly. Think about figures like Thomas Edison or Mata Hari.
Okay, Edison, I get the brilliant inventor, the icon of innovation. But Mata Hari, she was an exotic dancer and, well, a spy, right?
She was, but both of them, in their own ways, were masters of self-promotion. They understood the power of storytelling, of crafting a compelling narrative around themselves.
And they both used their visibility to achieve their goals, even if those goals were very different. Edison wanted to revolutionize technology, while Mata Hari used her mystique to gather intelligence.
It's a reminder that visibility can be a powerful tool, but it needs to be wielded strategically and with a clear understanding of your desired outcome.
So, court attention. But do it with purpose, with intention. Don't just blend in. Find a way to stand out from the crowd in a way that advances your agenda.
Now let's talk about delegation, shall we? Law 7 is get others to do the work for you, but always take the credit.
Ooh, this one sounds a little bit Machiavellian.
It can be, but it's also a practical necessity for anyone in a position of power. You can't do everything yourself. You need to leverage the talents and efforts of others.
But you also need to make sure you get credit for the results. Greene uses the example of Columbus. He discovered the New World, but ultimately it was others who reaped the rewards.
He made the crucial mistake of allowing others to control the narrative around his accomplishments.
He didn't manage his PR very well, did he?
Not at all. And as a result, he's often overshadowed by those who are more adept at self-promotion and claiming credit for his discoveries.
So delegate effectively, build a strong team, but always make sure you're the one holding the reins. Control the narrative and ensure that you receive the recognition you deserve.
It's a delicate balance, but an essential one for anyone seeking to build lasting power and influence.
Okay, moving on to Law 8. Make other people come to you. Use bait, if necessary. This sounds like a strategy for attracting followers, for building a movement.
It is. It's about making yourself the object of desire, the center of gravity that draws people in.
So instead of chasing after opportunities, you make yourself so irresistible that opportunities come chasing after you.
Exactly. Think about Napoleon. After his exile to Elba, he didn't just sit around waiting for his chance to return to power. He actively cultivated an aura of strength, of charisma, of destiny.
He basically turned himself into a magnet, drawing supporters to his cause.
Precisely. He understood the power of scarcity and desirability. By making himself appear more powerful and more in demand than he actually was at the time, he created a groundswell of support that ultimately propelled him back to the throne.
It's like reverse psychology on a grand scale.
Exactly. And this principle can be applied in countless ways, from building a successful business to attracting a romantic partner. It's about making yourself the prize, the one everyone wants.
Okay, let's talk about Law 9. Win through your actions, never through argument. This seems especially relevant in today's world of social media, where everyone's so quick to argue and debate.
It's so true. Everyone's trying to win arguments online, but what does that really achieve?
Yeah, it usually just creates more division and animosity. It's like a never-ending cycle of point scoring and one-upmanship.
Exactly. And Greene argues that actions speak louder than words, especially in the realm of power. Arguments often backfire. They create resentment, they reinforce resistance, and they rarely change anyone's mind.
So instead of engaging in endless debates, we should focus on proving our point through our actions.
Exactly. Think about Michelangelo. When faced with criticism of his plans for the Sistine Chapel ceiling, he didn't engage in lengthy arguments. He simply presented a stunning drawing that silenced all opposition and secured him the commission.
Wow, that's a powerful example. He let his work speak for itself.
He did. And it's a reminder that actions have a power that words can never match. They're undeniable proof of your abilities, your vision, your commitment.
It's like the old adage, show don't tell, but applied to the realm of power dynamics.
Exactly. And this brings us to Law 10, which is a bit of a cautionary tale. Infection. Avoid the unhappy and unlucky.
Ooh, this one sounds a bit harsh, but I have a feeling it's full of wisdom.
It is. Greene isn't saying we should be callous or unsympathetic to those who are struggling, but he is warning us about the contagious nature of negativity.
It's like that saying, misery loves company. But it's also true that negativity can drain our energy, our motivation, our belief in ourselves.
And that can sabotage our success, both personally and professionally. Greene uses a fascinating historical example to illustrate this principle. The story of Lola Montez and King Ludwig I of Bavaria.
Oh yes, the scandalous Lola Montez.
She was a captivating but volatile figure, and her influence over King Ludwig ultimately led to his downfall.
It's a classic tale of how negativity and recklessness can spread, bringing down even the most powerful individuals.
It's a reminder that we need to be mindful of the company we keep. Surround yourself with positive, supportive, inspiring people, those who uplift you and challenge you to be your best self.
Avoid those who drain your energy, who drag you down, who reinforce your doubts and insecurities.
Because their negativity can be contagious, and it can infect your dreams, your goals, your very sense of self.
All right, on to Law 11. Learn to keep people dependent on you.
This one might sound a little bit manipulative, but it's actually a fundamental principle of power dynamics.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Explain.
Think about it. When you make yourself indispensable, when others rely on you for their success, their security, their well-being, you gain a certain level of control.
You become the linchpin, the one holding everything together.
Exactly. And Greene uses Cosimo de' Medici as an example. He was incredibly wealthy and influential, but he didn't just hoard his power. He strategically used it to create a web of dependencies, to make himself the essential patron, the benefactor, the one everyone needed to stay on good terms with.
So it's about more than just being helpful. It's about creating a system where others benefit from your presence, from your expertise, from your resources. You make yourself the source, the one they can't afford to lose.
It's about strategic generosity, I suppose.
Okay, now for Law 12. Use selective honesty and generosity to disarm your victim. This one seems a bit counterintuitive. Aren't honesty and generosity good things? Why would we use them to disarm someone?
Well, think about it this way. In the game of power, people are often on guard, suspicious, expecting the worst.
Right, they're waiting for the attack, the betrayal, the power move.
Exactly. So when you act in a way that seems counter to their expectations, when you display genuine honesty or unexpected generosity, it throws them off balance.
It disarms them, makes them question their assumptions.
Precisely. And in that moment of vulnerability, you can gain a strategic advantage.
Okay, I'm starting to see how this works. It's about using honesty and generosity as tactical tools, not just as moral virtues.
And Greene offers a fascinating example to illustrate this principle. Victor Lustig, the con artist who sold the Eiffel Tower, not once, but twice.
Wait, what? He sold the Eiffel Tower?
He did. Well, he convinced people he did. And he used this blend of charm, audacity, and, yes, selective honesty and generosity to pull off one of the most audacious cons in history.
I have to read more about this guy.
He's a fascinating character, a
Yes.
true master of manipulation.
Okay, so back to the law. Use selective honesty and generosity to disarm your victim. It's a reminder that even the most virtuous qualities can be used strategically in the game of power.
It's about understanding the psychology of your opponent, recognizing their expectations, and then acting in a way that disrupts those expectations, creating an opening for you to advance your agenda.
Okay, on to Law 13. When asking for help, appeal to people's self-interest, never to their mercy or gratitude.
This is a tough one.
It is. It seems a bit cold-hearted, doesn't it? But Greene is simply acknowledging a fundamental truth about human nature. We're all, to some extent, motivated by self-interest.
We're more likely to help someone if we see a benefit to ourselves. Appeals to mercy or gratitude can be effective, but they're often less reliable than appeals to self-interest.
So when you need something from someone, don't just tell them why you need it or how much it would mean to you. Frame your request in a way that highlights how it benefits them.
Show them what's in it for them. Make it a win-win situation.
So it's not about being selfish or manipulative. It's about understanding how to motivate people effectively.
And this leads us to Law 14. Pose as a friend, work as a spy.
Ooh, this sounds a bit sneaky. I like it already.
It's about gathering information. It's about being observant, attentive, and discreetly extracting valuable insights from those around you.
Greene uses the example of Joseph Duveen, the art dealer.
Duveen was a master of observation and relationship building. He carefully studied his clients' tastes, their preferences, their aspirations.
And he used that knowledge to subtly influence their purchasing decisions.
He did. He was a master of persuasion, but he always operated behind the scenes, never revealing his hand.
So be observant, ask the right questions, and listen carefully to what people tell you, both verbally and non-verbally.
Because information is power, and sometimes it's best acquired through stealth and subterfuge.
Law 15 is a bit more intense. Crush your enemy, totally.
This one sounds pretty ruthless.
It does, doesn't it? But Greene argues that in the realm of power, leaving an enemy wounded can be more dangerous than eliminating them completely.
A wounded enemy is driven by a thirst for revenge. They'll plot and scheme, waiting for the opportunity to strike back.
So if you're going to take down an opponent, make sure you finish the job. Leave no room for a comeback.
Greene uses the example of the rivalry between Xiang Yu and Liu Pang, two contenders for the Chinese throne.
Oh yeah, that was a brutal power struggle.
It was. And ultimately, Liu Bang emerged victorious because he understood the importance of completely crushing his enemies. He eliminated all potential rivals, leaving no room for dissent or rebellion.
It's a harsh lesson, but one that's played out countless times throughout history. Mercy in the game of power can sometimes be a fatal flaw.
It's not about being cruel, but about understanding the stakes, the potential consequences of leaving an enemy with even a sliver of hope for revenge.
Okay, moving on to Law 16. Use absence to increase respect and honor. Now, this seems to contradict everything we've been talking about so far about visibility, about attention.
It does, doesn't it? But Greene argues that absence, when used strategically, can actually enhance your power.
It's like that saying, absence makes the heart grow fonder. If you're constantly present, your value can diminish. But if you strategically withdraw, you create a sense of scarcity, of desirability.
Exactly. People start to miss you, to wonder what you're up to crave your presence.
You become more valuable in their eyes because you're not always available.
Greene uses the example of Diocese, the median judge who gained power and respect by initially making himself readily available to the people, then withdrawing completely.
And the people, realizing how much they relied on his judgment and leadership, begged him to return to power.
Exactly. He created this void, this sense of loss that ultimately strengthened his position.
So it's not just about being present. It's about knowing when to make yourself scarce, when to step back and let others feel your absence.
It's about mastering the art of strategic withdrawal.
Okay, now for Law 17. Keep others in suspended terror. Cultivate an air of unpredictability.
This one sounds a bit ominous, but it's a powerful principle, especially for leaders.
So it's not about being a tyrant or creating chaos for the sake of chaos.
Not at all. It's about keeping people on their toes, preventing them from becoming complacent.
Because predictability breeds complacency, and complacency can be dangerous in the game of power.
Exactly. If your opponents can predict your every move, they can easily counter you. But if you're unpredictable, if you keep them guessing, you maintain a sense of control.
You keep them off balance. Greene uses the example of Bobby Fischer, the chess prodigy.
Fischer was known for his unpredictable behavior, his unconventional moves, his psychological gamesmanship.
He kept his opponents guessing, never letting them settle into a comfortable pattern.
And it was a key factor in his success.
So be unpredictable, introduce an element of surprise, and never let your opponents get too comfortable. It's about maintaining a sense of mystery and keeping them on edge.
Law 18 takes a different approach. It advises us to isolate yourself from your enemy.
Strategic withdrawal again. But this time, it's about avoiding direct confrontation with your enemies.
Exactly. It's about creating a space for yourself, both physically and mentally, where you can observe the situation, strategize, and act decisively when the time is right.
Greene uses the metaphor of a besieged fortress.
By isolating itself from the enemy, the fortress can conserve its resources, focus on defense, and wait for the opportunity to strike back.
So it's not about being a hermit or avoiding conflict altogether. It's about choosing your battles wisely and avoiding unnecessary entanglement with your enemies.
It's about maintaining your clarity, your focus, your energy.
Okay, on to Law 19. Know who you're dealing with. Do not offend the wrong person. This seems like common sense.
It does, doesn't it? But you'd be surprised how often people violate this principle. They underestimate their opponents, they misjudge their intentions, and they end up making enemies of those who are far more powerful or vindictive than they realize.
So it's about being observant, about doing your homework, about understanding the social dynamics at play.
Exactly. Greene uses the example of the court jester.
The jester. But wasn't the jester supposed to be like the fool?
That was often the perception. But in reality, the jester often possessed a keen understanding of the power dynamics at court.
They knew who to avoid offending, who to flatter, who to be wary of.
They were masters of social intelligence.
So pay attention to the subtle cues, the unspoken rules, the hidden hierarchies, and choose your battles wisely.
Don't make enemies unnecessarily, especially those who are more powerful or more ruthless than you.
Now for Law 20. Do not commit to anyone.
This one's a bit controversial, but I think it's essential for anyone seeking to navigate the complexities of power.
It's about maintaining your independence, your freedom of action.
Exactly. When you commit too strongly to any one person or group, you limit your options. You become vulnerable to their downfall, their mistakes, their enemies.
It's like putting all your eggs in one basket.
And if that basket breaks, you're left with nothing. Greene uses the example of Queen Elizabeth I of England.
Oh, right. The Virgin Queen.
She famously refused to marry, despite immense pressure from her advisors and from foreign powers.
She understood that marriage, while desirable for many, would have been a political liability for her.
Exactly. It would have aligned her too closely with one particular power or faction, limiting her ability to maneuver and to maintain her independence.
So be cautious about making commitments, especially when it comes to power dynamics. Maintain your autonomy, your flexibility, your ability to adapt to changing circumstances.
Because in the game of power, loyalty can sometimes be a trap.
Now for Law 21. Play a sucker to catch a sucker seem dumber than your mark.
This one's all about deception, about playing on people's
It's
egos.
about making your opponent feel smarter than you, right? So that they let down their guard and make mistakes.
Exactly. Greene uses the example of the classic con artist, who often feigns ignorance or naivete to gain the trust of their victims.
They play the role of the fool, the sucker, the one who's easily manipulated.
And it works because most people love to feel superior, to believe they're smarter than those around them.
It's a classic bait-and-switch tactic. You lure them in with a sense of their own intelligence, and then you strike when they least expect it.
It's a reminder that in the game of power, appearances can be deceiving. And sometimes the greatest advantage lies in appearing less capable than you actually are.
Okay, what about Law 22? Use the surrender tactic. Transform weakness into power. Now, this seems completely counterintuitive. How can surrendering be a path to power?
It's not about giving up or admitting defeat. It's about recognizing when you're in a position of weakness and strategically using that weakness to your advantage.
It's about choosing your battles wisely, knowing when to yield to avoid a greater loss.
Exactly. And Greene offers a fascinating example from ancient China, where a general facing a superior enemy force feigned defeat and lured his opponents into a trap.
So he used the appearance of weakness to create an opportunity for victory.
He did. And it's a reminder that sometimes the most effective way to win is to appear to lose. It's about outsmarting your opponent by playing on their expectations.
So surrendering, in this context, is not about weakness. It's about strategy, about adaptability, about turning the tables on your opponent.
And this leads us to Law 23. Concentrate your forces.
Focus your energy, your resources, your efforts on a specific goal.
Exactly. Don't spread yourself too thin. Don't try to do everything at once. Identify your key objective and then direct all your efforts toward achieving it.
Greene uses the example of the Rothschild banking dynasty.
They were incredibly wealthy and influential, but they didn't invest in everything. They carefully selected their ventures, focusing their resources where they would have the greatest impact.
So it's about being strategic, about prioritizing, about making every move count.
And this brings us to Law 24, which takes us into the fascinating world of courtly life. Play the perfect courtier.
Now this seems a bit old-fashioned, doesn't it? Like something out of a Jane Austen novel.
It does, but the principles of courtly behavior are still relevant today, especially in corporate environments and other hierarchical structures.
So it's about understanding the unspoken rules, the subtle cues, the art of navigating complex social dynamics.
Exactly. Greene emphasizes the importance of mastering indirect communication, flattery, and subtle manipulation to gain favor and influence.
It's about being charming, discreet, and always aware of the power dynamics at play.
He offers some fascinating examples from Chinese court chronicles, where advisors used cryptic messages and veiled warnings to influence the emperor's decisions.
So it's about reading between the lines, understanding the subtext, the hidden meanings.
And knowing how to play the game without appearing to play it.
Okay, on to Law 5. Recreate yourself.
This is about self-invention, about shaping your own identity to achieve your goals.
It's about recognizing that you're not bound by the roles that society assigned you, that you have the power to create your own persona.
Exactly. And Greene uses Julius Caesar as an example. He wasn't just a brilliant military leader, he was a master of self-promotion, of crafting a public image that inspired awe and admiration.
He understood the power of spectacle, of creating a larger-than-life persona that captivated the Roman populace.
He was a master of personal branding, centuries before the term even existed.
So it's not about being fake or inauthentic. It's about strategically presenting yourself to the world in a way that advances your agenda and helps you achieve your goals.
And speaking of strategic presentation, Law 26 is keep your hands clean.
This sounds like a lesson in ethics.
It is, in a way. But Greene is approaching it from a purely strategic perspective. He argues that maintaining a spotless reputation is crucial for those seeking to maintain power.
So it's about avoiding scandal, right?
Yeah.
Staying above the fray, keeping your hands free of any dirt that might tarnish your image.
Exactly. And if you have to do something that might damage your reputation, delegate it. Use intermediaries. Create a buffer between yourself and any potential blowback.
So it's about maintaining a facade of innocence, even if you're pulling the strings behind the scenes.
It's about appearing virtuous, even if you're not. Because in the game of power, perception is often more important than reality.
Now for Law 27. Play on people's need to believe to create a cult-like following.
This one's all about understanding human psychology, about recognizing our deep-seated need for meaning, for purpose, for something to believe in.
It's about tapping into that need, offering people a vision, a belief system, a charismatic leader to follow.
Exactly. Greene uses the example of the alchemist Bragadino, who kept Venice spellbound with his promises of turning dust to gold.
He played on people's desires, their fantasies, their hopes for a better future.
And it worked because people are often willing to believe in almost anything if it offers them hope or a solution to their problems.
So if you want to build a loyal following, offer them something to believe in, something that resonates with their deepest desires and aspirations.
Give them a vision of a better world, a brighter future, a path to salvation.
Law 28 is about action. Enter action with boldness.
Timidity is often perceived as weakness, especially where it comes to leadership. People are drawn to those who are confident, decisive, and willing to take risks.
So don't be afraid to be bold, to make a statement, to step outside your comfort zone.
Greene uses the example of Victor Lustig, the con artist who, with incredible audacity, managed to sell the Eiffel Tower.
It's amazing what you can achieve when you act with conviction and a healthy dose of chutzpah.
Exactly. So be bold, be daring, and never let fear paralyze you into inaction.
But balance that boldness with careful planning. Law 29 reminds us to plan all the way to the end.
Don't just jump into the deep end without a strategy. Think ahead, anticipate obstacles, and envision the desired outcome.
Greene uses the example of Balboa, who discovered the Pacific Ocean but failed to plan for his ultimate goal of finding El Dorado.
As a result, he let others seize the glory and the riches that he had so desperately sought.
It's a reminder that even the most remarkable achievements can be overshadowed if you don't plan for the end game. So think long-term, strategize, and always have a backup plan.
Don't let short-sightedness or a lack of planning derail your success.
Okay, what about Law 30? Make your accomplishments seem effortless.
This is about cultivating an aura of mastery, of making it look easy, even when it's not.
Greene uses the example of Houdini, the escape artist.
Houdini made his daring feats seem almost superhuman, but behind the scenes, it was all about meticulous planning, practice, and preparation.
He never revealed his methods, which added to the mystique and the sense of awe.
So conceal the effort, the struggle, the sweat behind your accomplishments. Make it look effortless, like it all came naturally to you.
Because people are more likely to admire and respect those who appear to achieve great things with ease. It creates an aura of effortless superiority.
And that can be incredibly powerful.
Now for Law 31, control the options. Get others to play with the cards you deal.
This is about subtly influencing the choices available to others, guiding them towards the outcome you desire.
It's about being a puppet master, but without appearing to pull the strings.
Exactly. Greene uses the example of Otto von Bismarck, who masterfully manipulated his rivals by limiting their options and forcing them to make choices that ultimately benefited his own agenda.
He set the stage, orchestrated the game, and ensured that he always held the winning hand.
It's a reminder that power often lies in controlling the context, the environment, the range of choices available to others.
So think strategically. Anticipate your opponent's moves and structure the game in a way that favors your desired outcome.
And this segues nicely into Law 32, play to people's fantasies.
This sounds like a marketing tactic.
It is, in a way, but it's also a fundamental principle of power dynamics. People are drawn to those who can offer an escape from reality, who can tap into their deepest desires, their fantasies, their longings.
So give them what they crave. Offer them a vision, a dream, a story that resonates with their hopes and aspirations.
Greene uses the example of Francesco Giuseppe Borri, who captivated followers with his claims of divine visions and promises of alchemic miracles.
He tapped into people's need to believe, their desire for something extraordinary, something magical.
And in doing so, he gained immense power and influence.
Okay, on to Law 33. Discover each man's thumbscrew. This one sounds a bit ominous.
It does, doesn't it? But it's a reminder that everyone has vulnerabilities, weaknesses, secret fears, or desires that can be exploited.
So it's about understanding human psychology, right?
Yeah.
Recognizing that everyone has a pressure point, a weakness that can be used to gain leverage.
Greene uses the example of Cardinal Richelieu, the cunning French statesman who masterfully manipulated King Louis XIII by playing on his insecurities and need for constant distraction.
Richelieu understood that knowledge is power, especially when it comes to understanding the hidden motivations of others.
So observe, analyze, and learn what makes people tick. Identify their vulnerabilities, their fears, their desires, and use that knowledge, ethically or unethically, to gain an advantage.
Now for Law 34. Be royal in your own fashion. Act like a king to be treated like one.
This is about self-confidence, about projecting an aura of authority and deserving respect.
Greene uses the example of Christopher Columbus, who, despite his humble origins, managed to secure royal patronage by projecting an air of confidence and entitlement.
He acted the part of a great explorer, a visionary leader, and people responded accordingly.
So it's about believing in yourself, projecting that belief outwardly, and acting in a way that inspires others to see you as a leader.
It's about embodying the qualities you want to be associated with.
And this leads us to Law 35. Master the art of timing.
This is about patience, about recognizing the right moment to act, the opportune time to make your move.
It's not about rushing in blindly. It's about waiting for the right moment, the moment when the stars align, so to speak.
Exactly. And Greene uses Joseph Fouché as a prime example. He was the French Minister of Police who expertly navigated the turbulent French Revolution.
He was like a chameleon, wasn't he? Adapting to the changing political landscape, always positioning himself to survive and thrive.
Exactly. He understood that timing is everything in the game of power. He knew when to be bold, when to be cautious, and when to simply wait and observe.
He was a master of playing the long game.
And this brings us to Law 36, which is, kind of a philosophical one. Disdain things you cannot have. Ignoring them is the best revenge.
It's about letting go, isn't it? About accepting what is and focusing your energy on what you can control.
Precisely. Obsessing over things that are beyond your grasp only leads to frustration, resentment, and a sense of powerlessness.
Greene uses King Henry VIII as an example.
Ah, yes. His obsession with having a male heir.
It consumed him, drove him to make reckless decisions, and ultimately led to disastrous consequences.
It's a reminder that sometimes the best way to get revenge on something that's unattainable is to simply ignore it, to let it go, and to focus your energy on something more productive.
So free yourself from the tyranny of desire, from the endless pursuit of things that are beyond your reach.
Focus on what you can achieve, what you can control, and let go of the rest.
Okay, now for Law 37. Create compelling spectacles.
This one's all about showmanship, about captivating people's attention and creating a memorable experience.
It's about using spectacle to reinforce your message, to enhance your power, to create an aura of awe and wonder.
Greene uses the example of the elaborate ceremonies of ancient Rome.
Those were more than just entertainment, weren't they? They were carefully orchestrated displays of power designed to awe and intimidate.
Exactly. They were about projecting an image of strength, of unity, of divine authority.
So think big, be bold, and create experiences that resonate with people on an emotional level.
Because emotions are powerful motivators, and spectacle is a great way to evoke them.
Law 38 is a bit more nuanced. Think as you like, but behave like others.
This one's about social conformity, about recognizing that openly challenging social norms and conventions can be counterproductive, especially if you're trying to gain power.
So it's not about being a sheep blindly following the crowd.
Not at all. It's about being strategic.
About understanding that sometimes it's necessary to blend in, to appear non-threatening, to conform to social expectations.
But that doesn't mean you have to sacrifice your own individuality or your own beliefs.
Right. You can think differently, you can hold unconventional views, but be careful about expressing them too openly, especially if you're trying to gain acceptance or influence.
Greene uses the example of the Athenian politician Hyperbolus, who was ostracized for his eccentric behavior and unconventional views despite his political acumen.
He was too far ahead of his time, maybe.
Perhaps, or maybe he just didn't understand the importance of social conformity and maintaining power.
So play the game, observe the social norms, and blend in when necessary.
But never stop thinking for yourself.
Law 39 is stir up waters to catch fish.
Ooh, this sounds mischievous.
It is, a little bit. It's about recognizing that sometimes it's advantageous to create a sense of chaos or instability.
Because in times of turmoil, people are often more open to new ideas, new leaders, new solutions.
They're looking for someone to guide them, to provide stability, to offer a path forward.
And if you can position yourself as that leader, as that source of stability in the midst of chaos, you can gain immense power and influence.
Greene uses the example of Amelot de la Houssaye, a 17th century writer and diplomat who was a master of manipulating his rivals by spreading rumors and stoking their insecurities.
He understood that conflict and uncertainty could be exploited to his advantage.
So it's not about creating chaos for the sake of chaos, but about strategically using disruption to advance your own agenda.
It's about being a master of controlled chaos.
Okay, on to Law 40. Despise the free lunch. This
But
seems pretty straightforward.
it does, but it's a principle that's often overlooked, especially in the realm of power. People love free stuff, but they often fail to recognize the hidden costs.
There's no such thing as a free lunch, right?
Yes.
Every gift, every favor, every seemingly altruistic gesture comes with strings attached.
Exactly. And those strings can be used to manipulate you, to control you, to make you indebted to the giver.
Greene uses the example of Louis XIV's extravagant court at Versailles, where nobles were expected to spend lavishly to curry favor with the king.
They thought they were receiving the king's generosity, but in reality, they were being subtly manipulated into reinforcing his authority.
It's a reminder that even the most seemingly innocuous gifts can be tools of power.
So be wary of those bearing gifts, especially if they're in a position of power. There's always a price to pay.
Okay, on to Law 41. Avoid stepping into a great man's shoes.
This is about recognizing the dangers of following in the footsteps of a legendary predecessor.
It's a tough act to follow. You're constantly being compared, judged, and often found wanting.
Exactly. And Greene uses Louis XV as an example.
Oh, right. He had the misfortune of following Louis XIV, the Sun King. Talk about an impossible act to follow.
It was. And Louis XV, despite his efforts, never quite managed to escape his grandfather's shadow. His reign was viewed as a decline, a pale imitation of the glory days of Louis XIV.
So learn from the past, but don't try to replicate it.
Forge your own path, create your own legacy, and avoid the trap of living in someone else's shadow.
Okay, what about Law 42? Strike the shepherd and the sheep will scatter.
This is a classic military tactic. Divide and conquer.
Target the leader, disrupt the chain of command, and the entire group will fall apart.
Exactly. Greene uses the example of Genghis Khan, who, despite facing larger and more powerful armies, strategically targeted enemy leaders, creating chaos and disarray among their ranks.
It's a reminder that leadership is crucial in any organization, any movement, any group.
If you can neutralize the leader, the rest will often crumble.
Okay, on to Law 43. Work on the hearts and minds of others.
This is about persuasion, about winning people over to your side through genuine influence rather than coercion or force.
It's about understanding people's motivations, their hopes, their fears, and appealing to those emotions in a way that inspires them to follow you.
Greene uses the example of Themistocles, the Athenian general who persuaded his fellow citizens to build a powerful navy, which ultimately saved Athens from the Persian invasion.
He understood the power of rhetoric, of storytelling, of connecting with people on an emotional level.
And it's a reminder that true power lies not in forcing people to do what you want, but in inspiring them to want what you want.
Now for Law 44. Disarm and infuriate with the mirror effect.
This is about using the power of mirroring to manipulate your opponent.
So you basically reflect their behavior back to them, but in a way that subtly undermines them.
Exactly. It's a psychological tactic that can be very effective. When you mirror someone's behavior, they often feel a sense of validation, of being understood.
It disarms them, makes them feel more comfortable, more trusting.
And in that moment of vulnerability, you can subtly manipulate them, guide them towards the outcome you desire.
But it's a dangerous game, isn't it? If people realize you're mirroring them insincerely, they'll feel betrayed and manipulated.
Exactly. Greene uses the example of Alcibiades, the Athenian general and politician, who was a master of mirroring, but his constant shape-shifting ultimately led to his downfall.
So mirror with caution and always maintain a sense of authenticity. Law 45 is preach the need for change, but never reform too much at once.
This is about understanding that people are naturally resistant to change, especially if it's too drastic or too sudden.
So if you're trying to implement change, introduce it gradually. Don't overwhelm people. Give them time to adjust.
Greene uses the example of King Henry VIII's break from the Catholic Church. While many in England were dissatisfied with the Church's authority, Henry's radical reforms created chaos and instability.
He pushed too far, too fast.
Exactly, and it backfired. So be patient, build consensus, and introduce change incrementally.
Okay, Law 46 is never appear too perfect.
This one's a bit counterintuitive, isn't it? We're often taught to strive for perfection, to be the best we can be.
But Greene argues that flaunting your perfection can actually be counterproductive in the game of power.
It can provoke envy, resentment, and a desire to see you fall.
It's like that tall poppy syndrome. The tallest poppy gets cut down.
Precisely. Greene uses Cosimo de' Medici as an example. Despite his immense wealth and power, he carefully cultivated an image of humility and moderation.
He understood that appearing too perfect would make him a target of envy and suspicion.
So downplay your strengths, emphasize your flaws, and make yourself relatable.
Don't make people feel inferior or threatened by your perfection.
Because their envy can turn into a weapon used against you.
Now for Law 47. Do not go past the mark you aimed for. In victory, learn when to stop.
This one's about knowing when to quit while you're ahead, about recognizing that overreaching and pushing your luck can lead to disaster.
It's about celebrating your victories but not letting them go to your head.
Exactly. Greene uses the example of the Athenian general Pausanias, who, after achieving victory in the Persian Wars, became arrogant and overconfident, ultimately alienating his allies and leading to his downfall.
He let success go to his head, and it cost him everything.
So be humble, be grateful, and know when to walk away from the table.
And finally, Law 48. Assume formlessness.
This is about adaptability, about being like water, flowing around obstacles, adjusting to the shape of the container.
Be flexible, be fluid, be open to change. Don't get stuck in rigid structures or outdated ways of thinking.
Greene contrasts the linear, confrontational strategies of chess with the fluid, adaptable principles of Go.
Chess is about brute force, about direct attack, about controlling the board.
But Go is about subtlety, about patience, about encirclement, about using your opponent's strength against them.
It's a reminder that in a constantly changing world, adaptability is key.
Those who can adapt, who can flow with the current, are the ones who will ultimately survive and thrive.
Wow, what an incredible deep dive. We've covered a lot of ground, from the subtle art of flattery to the bold act of self-reinvention. The 48 Laws of Power offer this fascinating roadmap to understanding the dynamics of influence, deception, and strategic maneuvering.
It's a reminder that power is everywhere, that it shapes our lives in countless ways, and that understanding its principles can be incredibly empowering.
Whether you're a CEO, a politician, an artist, or simply someone navigating the complexities of everyday life, these laws offer valuable insights into the human condition.
They encourage us to think strategically, to be aware of the forces at play, to make conscious choices about how we wield power and how we respond to those who wield it over us.
And ultimately, they remind us that power is a tool. And like any tool, it can be used for good or for ill. It's up to each of us to decide how we will use it.
So, dear listener, as you go forth into the world, armed with this newfound knowledge, may you use it wisely, ethically, and for the betterment of yourself and all humankind.